Hey, it's Todd Fox here from the Halos in the Infield podcast as we're getting started for another weekend series. But before we get to that, I have a co-host on today's show, and he's a friend of the show. He's also from the Believe Network. It is Seth DeWald. Also, what is the name of your show again?
The Believe in STL Cardinals on the Believe Network, so we cover the Cardinals there. So we're talking Cardinals all the time. We're in very similar boats. We're going to get into it in this episode this season. So hopefully there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe we'll talk about that, or maybe we'll just trash the teams. I don't know what we'll do, but it should be fun anyway. But you can follow the show on Twitter at Believe in STL Cardinals. You can follow me on Twitter at Seth _ DIEWOLD or DWald. So yeah, that's what there is to know about me.
And your YouTube channel, by the way?
YouTube channel, Long Live Baseball on YouTube, and I actually have a guy who covers the Cubs on there. He hasn't done that in a long time. He's a principal of a school, so he gets busy. But in the summertime, we'll for sure put out more content. But I've been putting out Cardinals stuff. We have a show that we do together, bust each other's balls. It's a lot of fun. So go check out the YouTube channel on Long Live Baseball.
I was going to say, you can't be too friendly on that show. Cubs, Cardinals, what the hell, man? So we'll get more into that as we start the show right now. Hey, you are now listening or watching the Halos in the Infield podcast, sponsored in part by Noble L Works over on 1621 South Sinclair, where you can get discounts by just mentioning HITI, Halos in the Infield, drink discounts on us, baby. And also by 714 Tickets, 714 Tickets. The price you see is the price you get, and you also get 10% additionally off in the Apply Now code once you order your tickets just by mentioning HITI, Halos in the Infield. Now enjoy the show. Well, Seth, as we get this show started, what a series that was. What a season it has been so far. And we're going to go back and forth asking each other questions about our respective teams. But I'm going to start out the box. I'm going to lead off real quick and ask you, Seth, was this, with all the homework and history you have on the Cardinals and what you do before the season and everything, was this where you predicted the Cardinals to be, midway through May?
No, absolutely not. I thought they had a real shot at contending for the division. I thought maybe there was an outside chance they would win the division. I thought the Cubs had more talent than them, but I really thought their biggest problem last year was filling some of these innings. They were getting terrible starting pitching, but the real problem was the starting pitching was bad and it wasn't going deep into games. That was putting a huge pressure on the bullpen. And you're kind of seeing the after effects of that. Gallegos is not the same pitcher coming out of the bullpen as he was last year, and now he's on the IL. So now the starting pitching's not good. It's still not good, but at least Lance Lynn can give you 5 innings. Miles Michaelis can give you 6 innings now. We're not dealing with the Jack Flaherty's of the world, but anyway, what I did not foresee coming, and all Cardinals fans are going to be right on board with me in this, is the offense just falling off a cliff, because even towards the end of last season, they were top 10 in a lot of categories like OPS, on base percentage, before they tanked. I know the numbers went down towards the end of the year, but they put a lot of people on the IL. They rested a lot of their veterans. So the offense has been the biggest concern, because that was, no Cardinals fan was saying, hey, we have to add, this player or that player. There were some perplexing moves, like adding Brendan Crawford and bringing back Matt Carpenter were weird moves, but I don't think anybody really was too outraged by those. Maybe I was, about Brendan Crawford. Why is this guy here? He's not, I don't know what's going on. Maybe a younger player makes more sense. But yeah, the offense has been horrible, and we're just kind of trying to find some light at the end of the tunnel here. And it's not getting any easier, man. It's not getting any easier, because we have the Baltimore Orioles coming up. The Red Sox are coming as the next series that we're playing. They're a scrappy team. They're above 500. And then we have the Cubs, and the Cubs are at the top of the division. So it's going to be a tough homestand coming up, but I'll throw it right back at you. Mm-hmm. Is this where you thought your Los Angeles Angels would be at this time in May?
Unfortunately, we have a lot of these types of seasons to where we get our hopes up because they get free agents and we get players that, hey, man, maybe these guys are going to turn around reclamation projects. And we feel maybe, if we get a little bit of pitching, the hitting should carry us. And we're hoping also for the injuries not to come around. But Seth, just like every other season, the injuries have crept up because we have the worst training staff of all time. We have little spending into scouting to get, a good farm system going. We can't keep players on the major league level healthy enough to let the players in the minors ferment, even if we had good talent down there. And then couple that with the fact that for the first time in a while, the pitching hasn't really been the problem this year. They've had a couple dud starts, couple blowups in the bullpen, but nothing like previous seasons. It's the hitting that is just god awful. So long story short, we're one of the worst teams with runners in scoring position, just like the Cards. And we don't do the fundamental things, and we don't have the talent enough I can't tell you how many one-run games we've lost because we make a mistake, whereas the other team can make a mistake and overcome it. We don't. We just like stick our heads in the sand and forget the rest of the game. So I am firmly believing that we are exactly right where we thought we were going to be. I thought we were going to be right around here, but I wanted to be surprised with Ron Washington's big talk in the preseason. I thought he was going to generate some of these losses into wins just by his fundamentals that this team under Madden and Numbnuts Nevin last year, just that wasn't in their vocabulary. So it was just about launch angle last year. So yeah, I felt they were going to be somewhere where they're at right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's do you think there's any like I'm not too familiar with like the prospects. You said something about the training staff and the lack of prospect. Is there like any light at the end of the tunnel? Like I know you guys have like a tremendous amount of players on the injured list. Like I think it's 14, right? I think I heard you say I listened to your show like when you roasted the seventh inning or the 8-run seventh inning, which in that first game, which like, and I have to confess something, and I don't want to go too off the rails here. Like as a Cardinals fan, like I was kind of sitting there going, we kind of need some change in the organization. And if the Angels just kick our ass, then maybe something will happen. I'm kind of sitting there going like teetering on the edge. Like if the Angels just, take 2 out of 3, because it's not been the greatest month for the Cardinals, but and we can talk more about that later. But is there like any light at the end of the tunnel for the Angels? Like, is there any prospect that you can look to and go, man, I'm really looking forward to him, or are those guys up right now, or what's going on there?
Well, the problem is with that. I mean, a guy like O'Hoppe, Neto, and I'm blanking on the other guy right now. Oh, Shonawell. Those guys should be in the minor leagues right now. They've been rushed up. I mean, God, we drafted Shonawell last year. He's already up. You know what I mean? Like he came up last year in September. And then we traded Kai Bush and Edgar Cuero to the White Sox for a rental last year, which was terrible. We wound up letting that dude go in 2 or 3 weeks. So we wasted 2 good prospects, which Cuero's tearing it up for AAA Chicago for the White Sox, and Bush has got like a 1.79 ERA. We've made a lot of mistakes drafting pitchers, like we did 20 pitchers a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago. So I think the Angels right now, the only light at the end of the tunnel, Seth, was a couple years ago, or at least last year at the beginning of the season when Artie was like, hey, I'm open to selling. And then we were like, yes, because it all starts and ends with him. And we'll get into him later because we'll talk ownership between the 2 clubs. But Artie is a jackass beyond jackasses, and it has trickled down. He has his hands in every cookie jar. And I think that's why we're so screwed up right now. Like we don't have again, if they were to tell us, hey, you guys are going to tank for the next 4 years, but we're going to try to do a Baltimore rebuild or a Houston rebuild, I'm on board. Just let me know. Let us fans know what you're doing. We don't know what they're doing. I mean, we thought they were going to go out and spend in the offseason, and they were the chintziest as they've ever been. Like they lowered the payroll almost $100 million.
Mm-hmm.
So and when you have 65% of your payroll tied up into 2 players, Who gets the rest? A bunch of scrubs.
Yeah. No, yeah. No, that's I gotcha. I gotcha. That's like when you it's funny when you talk about ownership because really there hasn't been much to complain about in St. Louis aside from, the 2 years that we've experienced like 2023 where the pitching just was absolutely god awful.
Hmm.
And now this year where the pitching and the hitting, like the pitching's a little bit better, but the hitting is just falling off a cliff. And so it really like I said this on the last episode of the podcast. I think the last 2 years have been a result of the Cardinals failing in areas that, the rest of baseball has caught up to them as far as scouting and development and analytics. Like they just aren't developing homegrown talent the way that they used to. And if you want to go all the way back to like Stephen Piscotty, Randall Grichuk, like all the way up to Jordan Walker having to be sent down now twice. He was sent down last year for a little bit. Now he was sent down again this year, and he's still in AAA. It makes you wonder, are the Cardinals really developing their top prospects the way that they should be? And there's a lot of criticism right now amongst the fan base. And for a fan base that usually shows up to the games, and I know the announced attendance is far different than what the attendance that the people that actually show up at the game. You're looking at Busch Stadium right now, and the fans are not showing up. And it's May, and it's towards the end of the school year, and normally Busch Stadium is just packed,
Hmm.
packed, and it will be for the Cubs series. But I struggle with that because I do feel like the the Cardinals fans, like there's some ownership comments that came out where that basically Bill DeWitt Jr. said, "Oh, like." The amount of our payroll is directly tied into how many, our fan rev or how many people show up to the game and ticket sales and stuff. And we put everything back into the team and our fan, like the fan base is kind of, rolling their eyes at that. We know that's kind of bullshit. Like,
Hmm.
but I think the fans not showing up doesn't really have, and I get interested to get your perspective on this too. I think Cardinals fans are smart enough to know, like, bullshit when they see it. And this offseason, really, if you think about it, like the reason that the Cardinals don't have starting pitching, because they had to sign 3 starting pitchers, is because they're not developing starting pitching the way that they used to.
Hmm.
And the Cardinals fans, I believe it's a microcosm of things that have happened. Like it's little things that have happened. It's like Dylan Carlson, for example, was one of our prospects that we thought was going to be the next big thing. Hell, I thought he was going to be the next big thing. But it's just like it feels like there's been too many of these instances where the development of prospects has failed. Like signing free agents we haven't signed the right free agents. Dexter Fowler, Brett Cecil, like yeah, like Steven Matz. They could go on and on. Andrew Miller back in the day. So the times that they needed to push the right buttons in those win now windows, they really didn't do that. So again, I think it's just a bunch of built up frustration that when you get to the point where you're a really bad team, and they're by all accounts they're a really bad team, like the fans obviously like they're like, oh, they throw their hands up in the air and they're like, we kind of saw this coming.
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinal fans. Since I've been to a St. Louis game a few years ago, and they blew me away because the amount of people I was seeing still doing a manual scorecard at a Cardinals game.
Yeah.
They're you guys are the real fans. You guys are the ones that are always respectful, except when the Cubs are there. But you guys are a great fan base, and it made national news to see you guys booing your own team in Busch Stadium. And I think that's also, it should tell you something about their team that they expect to be in they expect to be what do you call it, a winner all the time. They expect good quality. At least, I mean, at least if you're not winning the division, have good quality baseball out there. Have something, a plan. If you have a down year, you have a down year. But you guys are now feeling what we've been feeling over the last almost decade now, to where it's like, what are we doing here? You guys are finally putting your hands up in the air, like, hey, like, what are we doing? Like, why aren't we getting these free agents? Why aren't we trying to do this or this or this? And there's no accountability, and then there's no mission statement on how they're going to do it. And that's what leaves fans like you guys, especially, with your hands up in the air, because you're used to knowing what's going on. I think finally for our fan base, we're tired of it. We're tired of, like, oh, just spend the money, it's okay. And this is the first year you've seen our attendance just take a huge dip. And I still think that he doesn't make the kind of money that he's crying about through tickets. It's having the people there to buy the product, to buy the food. So if you were to strike against not buying the food and parking, because there's alternative areas where you could park for free outside Angel Stadium, if people were to do that more and not pay Artie the parking and all that other stuff, that's where it hits these owners. My question back to you, Seth, though, is Artie's trying to use the excuse of, hey, we don't have the Bally's this year. The Bally's money's up in the air, and we lost Otani, so we need to cut back. So is your organization using the old Bally's trick?
Yeah, it's definitely something that's been floated around, and nobody really knows what the status is other than the contract runs out. Like, it's we if I'm understanding this correctly, and it's very possible that I'm not. The contract runs out before the baseball season is over. Like, it runs out in like late September, I think. I
Correct.
could be wrong about that. So there's this weird stretch of time, like, well, how are we going to watch the games? Like, I'm lucky enough that I don't know how it's possible, but I live in Kansas City, and I somehow can get the Cardinals games. I don't know how that's possible on MLB TV, so I'm lucky. But everybody else, I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know if there's a real plan. I know they floated out the idea of a Redbird network where you would subscribe for, like, I think they floated out like $24 a month or something like that. But yeah, that's definitely been an excuse. But the Cardinals, like, and I'll say this, like, spending money is great. And I think the Cardinals spend enough money, like 170, 180 million typically is
Mhm.
where they're at. And that's puts them somewhere like 10th, 11th, 12th. And, it's St. Louis. It's not Chicago. It's not Los Angeles. It's not like the big markets. And like the Cubs have always dumbfounded me because I've always been afraid, like, when are the Cubs going to figure out that they're in Chicago? Like, when are the Cubs going to figure out, like, they can, like, they could be legitimately, they could be like a Los Angeles Dodgers if they figured it out. And I think they're on their way to doing that, which terrifies me to no end because,
Mhm.
obviously the Cubs and the Cardinals are rivals, but like the Cardinals have always been a mid-market team, but where they get themselves into trouble is like they're just not developing talent the way that they used to. And now they're using free agency. Like the Cardinals, like, people bitch and moan about the starting pitching, but they're spending $99 million on their starting pitching this year. So they're
Yeah.
spending money, like they're just not spending it well. Like, Todd, they're spending it on like Miles Michaelis, yeah, Lance Lynn, they've thrown 11 million at. Steven Matz, they gave a 4-year, $44 million deal to. He's been hurt basically his entire contract. He's flashed here and there, but he's not been available. And, Kyle Gibson has been good. Lance Lynn's, had been steady. I get, like, but these are not like, these are older players, right? These are
Yeah.
not long-term solutions. So if a team like the Cardinals, like, really the only difference between like a team like the Cardinals and a team like the Royals, and somebody is like in the chat probably going to scream at, like, the Cardinals are not the Royals, although the Royals are good this year,
Yeah.
is like their history and their fan base. And like, they show up at the game, like, and typically they're good. And like, it's, like, so if they don't, there's a real concern amongst like media pundits, fans, like, are the Cardinals losing that because they're not running the organization the way that they used to? They don't have the edges they used to have. So how do they get some of that back? And that's like the $1 million question. And yes, to bring it back around full circle, the Cardinals will use just about any excuse not to overextend their payroll above what they're comfortable paying. Like, I was the biggest proponent of, you need another elite starting pitcher if you want a real shot to win this division and make a run in the playoffs. you have a history with Jordan Montgomery. He's out there way past when anybody thought he would be out there.
Yep.
What's stopping you from like going just a little bit above your comfort zone, maybe flirting with that $200 million number when the fans continually show out, like continually 3 million fans every year go through those turnstiles. And it's just like to me, it's not necessarily about the money that they spend. It's like how they're spending it, and they're not developing talent. And it's just like this microcosm of air. And oh, by the way, optically, we're going to extend our manager like when he's just coming off of a terrible season, which doesn't really mean as much as you think, like, because they could just fire him. It's a manager. It's fine. But they also extended Mozeliak too through the 2025 season. So there's just a lot of frustration and a lot of angst, and it doesn't help when the owner uses excuses like, "Oh, we don't know about the Bally deal," and "Oh,
Yeah.
like, well, if fans don't come through the turnstile, well, then we can't spend as much money on players." Like, well, like optically, it's just kind of shitty, and it's like it's the Cardinals have really fucked up a lot, like with optics. Like they could really do some simple things from a front office perspective that would help them out. And definitely this latest gaffe, like, did not do the Bill DeWitt Jr. any favors when he said, well, it's all about the if fans not showing up to games just doesn't make any sense. It's like, it's the only thing we have, man. It's the
Yeah.
only thing we have to show we are not happy. So
Yeah,
come on,
booing and
man.
not showing up is the ultimate FU to the owner, because it's
Yeah.
like, okay, you're not putting a good enough product out there. Or you've pissed off the fans. And the thing that you guys have going for you is the fact that you have that St. Louis media who also expects good things from the Cardinals and also feels pressure from the rival Chicago, Milwaukee, and other teams that are bouncing up in that division. So, down here in Anaheim, people, because Artie claimed Los Angeles, everyone's just like, okay, it's Anaheim. We have literally 3 beat reporters that actually give a damn. Other than that, there's not much coverage on this team. So when they tried to use that whole Artie excuse, they were getting blasted too, because San Diego actually stopped being paid. At least Anaheim's getting paid for most of the year. San Diego didn't get paid last year, and they're not getting paid this year. The MLB is actually floating them till they figure things out, and they can't complain down there. They have one of the highest attendance right now. They're averaging 41,000, 42,000 per game, and they're barely 500. And this team, the Angels, were in that same position. We were turning out 3 million with a sub 500 team or a 500 team at the end of the season, with really no direction. And when you bring up pitching staff, I think Angel fans, idealistically would love to have like a Justin Verlander, a free agent guy who's been pitching in the league for a while, a proven winner to anchor that rotation. And then maybe you have a Reed Detmers who's turned the corner finally and has turned into that number 2A kind of pitcher, or a Sandoval. And then you have 2 crafty veterans at the back end of that rotation. We're filled basically with a bunch of what ifs, like 3s and 4s, and then some guys that shouldn't even be pitching right now. We converted reliever to a starter, which granted he's done good, Soriano, but he shouldn't be up here. I mean, we had all eyes on him was he's going to be a good setup man, but all of a sudden things change. Free agents, like you said, that were out there, we could have built an entire rotation on the guys that were out there, and we didn't do it. And the Angels were constantly being named as a team to get this guy, that guy, got that guy. And as Angel fans, just like as I can see the frustration in you as a Cardinal fan, we have had similar off seasons. It's just ours has gone longer than your guys' drought and the frustrations with your owner. I mean, almost the same things are happening. I mean, had we not given you a couple extra wins, we'd probably have the same record right now. It's been terrible. We're not developing players either. So I feel your frustration with the owner. I feel your frustration with the direction, with the excuses, and you guys, just like I tell my fans on the postgame show, we're a soft fan base. You guys expect more, but we're a soft fan base. You'll still get half our fan base being like, you got to still cheer for them. Artie's not the problem. Like, what are you watching? We're arguing with each other when we should be booing the product on the field. And I give you guys all the props in the world for having the reputation you guys have as being some of the smartest fans and also the most loyal fans. to actually have a collective boo and to be frustrated, because that also shows that you guys are together as a fan base.
It also shows we care, right? We
Yes.
care about what's going on the field, and we want it to be better because it should be better. There's really no excuse for it to be better. And like I said earlier, and I do believe this. It's like a built up frustration of, the Cardinals were really good in like the 20, like leading up to the years when the Cubs won the World Series in 2016. Like they were really good in like 2014, 2015. And I've been screaming from the rooftops like this. We need an ace to go with Adam Wainwright. We need another pitcher we need like that combination we had back when they won the World Series in 2006. We need the Chris Carpenter, Adam Wainwright. And there was a perfect guy, and Mike Jones, my co-host on Long Live Baseball, knows this. And it was a story that got out. I think it was either Bernie Michaelis or it was one of the not the St. Louis beat reporters. It might have been Derek Gould, but Max Scherzer, who the Cardinals actually drafted
Mm-hmm.
before he decided to go to the University of Missouri, and then he was drafted by the Diamondbacks. So you literally have the hometown kid, and according to those beat reporters, he wanted to play in St. Louis. All he said was just get it close to this other offer I got with Washington. Like just get it in the ballpark. I want to come play for St. Louis. And the rumor is that they never called him. And
Oh,
it's like it's just shit like that, like you're where you like we have a legitimate move here and it's a guarantee. Yeah, is it going to cost you a lot of money? Yeah, but is it pretty much a guarantee this guy's going to be awesome, out barring injury? Yeah, and is he going to give you a shot to like win the World Series? Yeah, like he's going to with the team that you have right now. And it's just like stories like that, I think, make Cardinals fans go like, come on. Like we had
yeah.
a real shot. This guy wanted to be here, which is always like if you look at the track record for the free agents that the Cardinals sign, that's always like something that they say in the press conference. Like he really wanted to be here, which is important, I guess. But it's like every time, like, come on. Like it's yeah, we get it, dude, but we really want them to be a good player too that can be impactful. And money talks, and I'm sure money had to do with the reason that they wanted to be here too. But I digress. But it's just like stories like that. And then of course, with the Washington Nationals, all he did was, go to what? Let me see here. 5 All-Star games. He won 2 Cy Young awards, and you're just like it's another moment in leading up to this where we are now that you go, man, what if they would have done that? What if
Yeah,
they would have brought him in?
I'm the same way with Garrett Cole. I mean, we were they weren't asking for all that much more, and Artie didn't want to flip that, except he goes and pays what 265 or I forget what it was 225, 235 something for Rendon. And it's like again, okay, so you can't get Cole. And the Angel fans were like, some of them we call honks. The grass is always green no matter what. They were like,
Mhm.
well, he can't play every day. Anthony Rendon plays every day. Why would you pay that much for a pitcher that pitches only every 5 games? It's like because he's an ace, he could
Yeah.
pitch you into the playoffs. Hello.
Mhm.
I mean, what have we been lacking the last few years prior to this pitching? And then what did
Yep.
we do? We got a free agent like how you would draft your football in what is it called? Fantasy football. Next
Mhm.
best available player was supposedly Anthony Rendon, and we just got Rendon for a little bit more than what we would have paid for Cole. And all Cole has done is just what you talked about with Scherzer, been a Cy Young Award winner, been constantly in the playoffs. Yeah, the Yankees haven't won a World Series, but they've been right there every year. It's like, dude, we could have had him anchoring our rotation for years already. Instead, we're with a guy who's barely played a full season in 4 seasons. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's again, and like it's just ever since the Cub. I feel like it even started back then, even when the Cardinals were good, because it kind of started with those prospects that I mentioned, like the Piscotties and the Randall Grichuk's. They were supposed to be the next big thing, and then
and they
it
whiffed
was,
on him. Yeah.
they whiffed on them, and then now it's like Dylan Carlson, and supposedly they had deals on the table where they could have traded Dylan Carlson for who was it? I think it was the catcher that the Braves got, Sean Murphy. I
Oh
think
yeah, from the
like
A's.
that. Yeah, there was a rumor that they wanted like a package of like, and he was like the piece that they wouldn't include, or it was like either him or Brendan Donovan, or you look back on it now and you're like, oh my god, how stupid can they be? But like at the time they were like, oh, like Dylan Carlson's a huge part of our future, and I think that's a part of it too. And you look at some of the trades they've made. They've traded away. Um, Oh, I'm space. Dulles Garcia was a guy that they cut, and then he went to Texas, and Texas. To,
Mhm.
to be fair, Texas released him, and then they brought him back, and now he's awesome. But oh dang, I'm spacing on the outfielder. But they traded for Libertor.
You
Um,
guys also had that prospect that died tragically too, right?
yeah, Oscar Taveras.
Yeah,
Yeah, in a car
Tavares is
accident.
gonna be an amazing player.
Yeah,
So
so
so and
it's bit of bad luck there for sure. Like obviously, like terrible tragedy,
well,
and
same with the Angels. I mean, we had Aiden Hart. That guy died, car accident
yeah,
or
and
drunk driver.
yeah. And Alex Reyes was another one that was the number one or the number one prospect in all of baseball at one time, and he came up. And I remember calling sick to work to watch his debut
Oh,
start. Like this is a big deal, and I'm sitting there watching it, and it's like a nightmare. Like he immediately, like, I can't remember what inning, but the velocity was way down, and he got pulled from the game, and then he was hurt, and yeah,
that was
it's
it.
just yeah, it's just like that stuff it happens that quick in baseball, which is why like the guys who are really good at it, like the Max Scherzers of the world, the Garrett Coles of the world, it's like you almost can't throw enough money at those guys to come in and provide like a stable number one legitimate starting pitcher at the top of the rotation. Like
Yeah, I'll tell you this real quick. You know, one trade that's always gotten me frustrated that didn't happen because sometimes this team will either prospect hug too much, they'll hold on to guys way too long, or they'll just dump them too fast. That's what we've done. And one time we held on to our prospects. Get this, we had a trade in place that was going to send we were going to get Dontrell Willis when he was a year off of the World Series, AJ Burnett, Miguel Cabrera, and I want to say one other relief pitcher. And they were going to come to Anaheim, and all we had to give up was Irvin Santana, Jeff Mathis, what is it called? Brandon Wood and Dallas McPherson, which obviously none of those guys panned out except, Santana had a couple good years, but come on, man. We that was
yeah,
going to go along with a team that
wow,
already had Guerrero and all these other studs on it. So, I mean,
wow.
dude,
Yeah, it's like that. You get like, and this is like the Cardinals' problem too. Is like you get so close, and you feel like you can use free agency for what free agency is actually intended for. It's to, like, put you over the top and to
correct.
put you in that category. It's not meant to fill out your entire roster, which is how I feel like the Cardinals were this year, especially with their starting pitching. That's where you can get into trouble. But yeah, moves like that, like you're talking about, just passing on that just feels like, ooh, somebody got scared, or somebody like, but no, like that's what this is about, like taking calculated risks. And like somebody like Theo Epstein, who's built like multiple championship teams, like he's whiffed on a lot of players, but he was never afraid to pull the trigger. And you can't help but respect that. And as a fan, you're like, well, at least at least they tried. At least they made that move. They pushed their chips into the middle of the table, and they said, "Here, deal with this team. We've built this amazing team, and we
But
hope it." Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, but when those guys like Epstein or like an Andrew Friedman, who I respected in Tampa and was pissed off he went to the Dodgers because I'm like, crap, now he has a blank check to work with all that good
Mm-hmm.
stuff that he does. The thing is, what you're talking about when they push their chips in and they make those moves, and yes, if it doesn't work, the difference between, I guess, your general manager and my general manager at the time now compared to those other great guys is the fact that they can go back to the drawing board and recruit and scout good again and just be like, okay, that was our bad, but we'll make up for it. Or we'll do this and we'll do this. We'll find a way to scout better, or we'll get a player here to add to give some of these guys some time to come up. they have a plan again.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
comes
yeah.
down to a game plan,
Yeah.
and I feel like now I understand the Cardinals a little bit more because a lot of the things that we're frustrated with, you guys are going through.
Yeah, it's funny how, I'll be talking to Mike for 2 hours about this, and just like it all comes back to, you have to be able to develop talent. You have to
Correct.
be able to cultivate your own talent, and to take it a step further, you have to be able to develop your own pitching, because
Mhm.
that's a gold mine. That is an absolute gold mine, and that is where the Cardinals, they used to be like the Devils. They call it like the voodoo Devils magic or whatever. You hear broadcasters say like, where do the Cardinals find Michael Waka? Right? Like
Mhm.
where did he come from? Or I guess it was Jack Flaherty was a late first round pick, so he was more of a higher pedigree guy. But again, it was like, how are the Cardinals doing this? And now it's very much like the Cardinals have. It's almost like they've lost their superpowers,
Correct.
and they just, they're and as a result, I feel very strongly that, like, if this season continues to not go very well, it's like, what do you want? Like, a lot of people want to blame the manager, and that's the easy thing to do. I don't know what Ollie Marmol was supposed to do last year with that pitching staff. And I don't know what you're supposed to do when Paul Goldschmidt doesn't hit and Nolan Arenado's OPS is below like seven. I think it's like six in the 600s right now. Might be a
Yeah.
little bit higher, but like, I don't know what you're supposed to do when your offense just doesn't hit, like your offense that was supposed to be what this team's built on. Like, what do you do? Like, he's tried a bunch of different lineups. Really, the blame should be focused at the front office, like, because they're spending a lot of money. Like, I'm fine with the amount of money they're spending, like 170 million, 180 million. You can build a pretty good ball club with that, especially in St. Louis, or at least you should be able to.
Mhm.
But it's like, where are they spending the money? They're spending the money on starting pitching because they haven't developed starting pitching. Then that's where you
Yeah.
get into problems.
And the thing is too, when we've spent before, a lot of people will say the same thing for the Angels. Hey, get off Artie's back. He's spent the most money in Angels franchise history. It's like, okay, you got to adjust for inflation when Disney owned him and stuff. Because again, when he bought this team, it was under 200 million. Now it's valued over 2.5 billion, and the payrolls have gone up ever since he's had them. It's been 20 years. The problem has never been how much art up until this year. Um, that Artie doesn't spend. It's just how he's spending it. They never do their homework. They never find out, well, this guy, like Anthony Rendon. You think for a minute, if I'm a GM or you're a GM and we're doing our scouting report and be like, oh, how's your family life? Oh, okay, you got a wife and kids. What's your favorite thing to do? Oh, I don't really like baseball. I consider it a job. Oh, red flag. Like, I'm not going to sign you. And the Angels are like,
Yeah.
come on over.
Yeah.
Like they don't do their homework. They don't try to see, okay, this is what we need. It's always like best available player, or let's overspend on this guy. You don't need to do that. And I think the Cardinals are starting to fall into a bad trend like that too, because that's a division too where, not to get off topic, but I just thought the Cardinals were going to be pretty good contenders this year because Milwaukee's kind of down because the MLB came down on them about their stadium. They lost their Burns, and who are they
Yeah.
going to have as far as pitching and their bullpen. And then the Cubs are on the come up, but they're actually playing better than I thought. But I thought you guys would be right there with them. But to see you guys playing almost the same way we are, and the only difference to me is Goldschmidt and Arenado are actually on the field. They're not hurt.
Yeah. 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 That was
Otherwise
a good point.
they could flip jerseys and I'd be like, hey, that's the Angels right there.
Yeah, I know, it's pretty brutal. Because you're right. Like, it's true. Like, they just haven't. To be honest, the Milwaukee Brewers are what the St. Louis Cardinals used to be. Like, the Brewers just find, like, who would have thought? Like, I thought, how are the Brewers going to be good? They literally trade away like a legit ace to Baltimore.
Yep.
Like how are the Brewers going to be good? I just assumed it would be a two-team battle, maybe a three-team battle with the Reds at the beginning of the season. But and who knows if they can? And they lost their manager to the division rival Cubs. Like, all these things, and yet they've built an infrastructure where they're developing talent, and it seems like it's like the Brewers devil magic now. Like they just
Mhm.
they find ways to win. And this is what the Cardinals used to be. This is how very similar. And it's just funny how you think that these things don't matter, but like in many fans that are surface level fans, just they show up and they want the major league team to be good, but it's like, man, the development in the minor leagues and the prospects that you pick, these are probably the most important decisions that GMs can make, and the development of prospects is like I said, it's a gold mine if you can do it right. And the Cardinals did it right for a number of years. In the last 5 or 6 years, they haven't done it right, and you're seeing the results on the field.
Yeah, and I think you don't want to get into a situation where you guys get into a decade of just mediocre to below mediocre baseball like what we're in
Mhm.
right now. I believe me, I want to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's like the light at the end of the tunnel is like a needle right now. That's how big it is. And
Yeah.
we're hoping things change. But real quick though on the series before we get into some other questions though, the game 1 10-5, were you shocked at how the Cardinals ripped open that lead?
Well, there's no doubt. Like you don't want to say like I felt very strongly that the Angels did more to lose these games than the Cardinals did to win them,
Mm,
because I suppose the I and on the broadcast, and I noticed it too, and I don't know what you think about this. I thought they were throwing a lot of breaking balls, like a lot of off speed stuff, when it's just like, and the walks killed them. The walks
mhm.
killed the Angels, and like the Cardinals, like are not a team that has been handling any fast. Like if you throw the ball in the strike zone, if you just throw a fastball, like I've seen Paul Goldschmidt get blown away like in the series by a 93-mile-an-hour fastball in the zone. So like really all you have to do is challenge these Cardinal hitters. And I felt at times the Angels pitchers, and this is just a dummy on a couch talking, didn't attack these Cardinal hitters enough in the zone with the heat, with the fastball, and they just relied too much on their off speed stuff. So I felt like, especially in that first game, where I think the walks just compounded, and like it was getting crazy there, and that really opened the door for the Cardinals. But and like the layman is going to go, man, the Cardinals put up 10 runs, and I'm going, it's probably one of the least impressive 10-run performances I've ever seen. To be honest, and trust me, I'm looking for some light too. And they did some nice things. Like we had Arenado hit a home run, Goldschmidt hit a home run in the series. But that first game, I think it was more on the Angels being bad than the Cardinals being good. But what's your perspective?
I feel the same way. A lot of times this year where they've actually pitched themselves into the count of like a 1-2, 0-2 count on a lot of these hitters. And then for some reason, they're calling for the ball down. The pitcher leaves it a fat cookie, curveball or a fastball, which most of our pitchers don't have that. Like they have get me over fastball stuff at their peak. What's his name from last night has a 93-mile-per-hour fastball. Sandoval's around the same. So they don't have these fastballs that can kill you. So, Canning, I should say, Canning really doesn't have that kind of fastball. He relies on movement. But if you're not spotting that fastball to set up the ones that are moving, like they're almost pitching backwards. And it's been very frustrating to watch. And they're still with relatively good ERAs, with the exception of Sandoval, Estevez, and Suarez. Everyone else on in the rotation or in the bullpen has been fairly decent. So, but yeah, they when they make mistakes, they make mistakes, and they blew up in that game, and you couldn't help but shake your head because you're like, all you've been asking for is the Angels to average or more runs, and they should win. The numbers say they should win, and they get that 4-run lead, and all the praise we've been giving the bullpen over the previous few nights, and then they just blow a big wad all over the field. It was terrible to watch.
Yeah, and then like the second game, I
Yeah,
couldn't I couldn't get over like your second baseman, and I don't know his name, but he had a couple, like he had one play for sure where
Kyrie Paris
yeah, I think, yeah, where he tried to like he
flip it.
fielded the ball and like flipped it with his glove, And
Yeah.
I'm like, just get the out, man. Like, just
Yeah.
like, yeah, because I think he's trying to get that double play.
Yep.
And I'm like, just, it comes back. It's amazing. And I swear I'm not trying to be like coach little league dad here, but
No,
it's
no, no.
amazing. It's amazing how often it comes back to the fundamentals and
Oh,
just
absolutely.
thinking about like situational baseball. And it's like that runner at second base, like if he's there, like obviously the chances of scoring a run are go up. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure it out. So just it's a tough play. He had to go to his right and the ball was hit, if I remember correctly, pretty sharply, but he should have made the play. And instead, he's just trying to make a spectacular, ESPN highlight double play
Mhm.
ball. It's just like field it, flip it, and get the out. If you don't get the other out, it's fine. But I don't know. I don't know. What's your perspective on that? Because again, in game two, where it comes down to plays like that, like it comes down to these microcosm of plays when these teams are very evenly matched, and then I think it was Burleson hit the go ahead 2-run home run, and that ended up being the difference there because you ended up getting to Sonny Gray um, later in the game, and it was tied at 5-5. But I just felt like there were some moments in that game where I'm like, man, the Angels are kind of killing themselves here, and
Yeah.
I don't know if this is really about the Cardinals being good as opposed to them just lucking out in situations like that. So what's your take on that?
Well, we like making other teams famous, and we have, that's our third second baseman or fourth second baseman, and then we've had 4 or 5 third basemen this year. So there hasn't been that
Okay.
kind of like, maturity or like the cohesiveness in the infield. Number one. Number two, Kyrie Parrish should be in double A right now.
Oh,
He should not be up here on the roster. He's never really proved himself in Salt Lake, which is triple A. He should be in Rocket City right now. And the fact that we've had to move him up so quickly, and we did that last year too, which we shouldn't have. He's not ready, man. And you could tell not only with a bat, but with the infield, like you said, he should have just cupped it, flipped it real quick because you had Goldschmidt running. He was a dead duck. He wasn't even trying to slide in. So I mean,
yeah,
you
yeah,
had him out, man. Take the out where you can get it. And fundamentally, we're just poor in every aspect because later in that game, again, for a team that hasn't bunted good, which I went to the Kansas City game a couple days before the Cardinals came. Two things pissed me off. Obviously, we were winning the whole time 1-0, and then we go to Esteves, who sucks, and he gives up a 2-run homer to a guy batting 188. He puts a cookie down the middle. That pissed me off. And then leaving the stadium, there was a bunch of Royal fans making fun of us, and
oh no,
I'm like, dude, what do you guys got to cheer about? Oh, I go, congratulations, you beat the Angels.
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
hard to do, you know. But
yeah,
but getting back to it, yeah, it just blew my mind that we're asking a guy to bunt when we have the bases loaded. Who that guy's only been on the team, Jeremy or whatever, however the hell you say his name. I still can't say it. He's only been on the team like 2 weeks. Like you don't know him from me right now. You're still trying to figure out who he is and can he still play to a level he did a few years ago. And you're asking him to bunt in a 1-run game with the bases loaded and to a guy who the Cardinals was wild at the
yeah.
time. He probably would have walked him if he would have just held the bat on his shoulder. And I think that really pissed off Angel fans. And then Ron Washington after the game saying, well, that's on him. I made the right call. That's on him. It's like, bro, that
Mhm.
ball was 3 feet off the plate, But
Yeah, even if that was the play where they tried to steal home, like, on a
yes.
suicide squeeze. Oh my god, I remember seeing that and going, "Wow, okay, we'll take that, I suppose." It's
Yo,
and I
thanks, guys.
yeah, like, it's just one of those where you kinda outthink the room, I think, like,
Mhm.
and even if you feel that way as a manager, you can't say it in the press conference. You just gotta say, "Yeah, that one's on me. That's my bad. It didn't work out." You gotta take the responsibility off, I think. But
And
anyway,
real
that's kinda
and real
wild.
quickly, the Angels have done this in plenty of series this season where with the exception of Burns on opening day, they've taken on some pretty good pitchers and they'll put up some numbers. And then the secondary, third, fourth pitchers, like they just get shut out or they only score 1 run. And you're like, damn it, why'd they do that to the ace? But because I was expecting a full-on blowout in game 2, and that was a actual, again, we beat ourselves, like you said, but after they won that game, were you just thinking clean sweep with Lynn in game 3?
Mhm. No, well, no, because I know the Cardinals, and this is just what happens is the Cardinals, there's no this season, there's, like, no momentum. Like, you would think, like, okay, they scored 10 runs, they scored 7 runs, they're gonna put up another, series of crooked numbers, and
Correct.
the past Cardinals teams, that's what they would have done.
That's what I
But
was thinking.
yeah, but not this Cardinals team, man. They reverted right back to, their old habits, and they put up just 2 runs in that game. So, yeah, and Lance Lynn is what he is at this point. I think
Mhm.
that's about what you can expect. He's gonna give up anywhere from, 2 to 5 runs. I think he gave up a home run. It would have been a lot, like, the stat line looks bad, but he gave up that home run, and that caused him to give up 5 runs in that game. So, but he's gonna give you 5 or 6. He's probably gonna give up 3 runs and hopefully keep you in the game. But if the offense doesn't score more than 2, then you're kind of screwed with Lance Lynn on the bump. So it's not shocking to me. Like I said to you, I think in the pre-show or maybe to start the show, these two teams deserve each other. Like these
Yeah.
two teams are very similar places, and maybe the Cardinals should be better. Like I did not see this season coming from Paul Goldschmidt or Nolan Arenado to this point. Now they're veterans; they still could turn it around, but we'll see. But man, it's just funny. Like you just have to laugh at it sometimes to get through it. And like my grandpa always said, save your money and buy good whiskey because you're gonna need it to get through this season.
Yeah, I think you take that to heart. I mean, you guys are sitting there like not. I think we've played 3 extra games. Could probably you guys have had some rainouts, but
Yeah.
but you guys are 8 games out, just as we are 8 games out. And I
Yeah.
think it's surprising to. I mean, look, I didn't buy into Pittsburgh's hot start either, but I definitely thought where you were thinking the Cincinnati Reds would be in that mix. The cluster
Mhm.
of whoever was the top team. They've been a disappointment. You guys are down there. And you look at our division, it's almost the same. Like, who would have thought Houston would have the same record you guys do in Cincinnati? And we're behind them. They've won 4 in a row, and they're still 7 games under. Oakland is somehow somewhat relevant, and then you got Texas and Seattle barely above 500. So this division's been pretty, and we haven't. This series that we're playing against Texas tomorrow is the first time we're playing any division yet opponent. So.
Yeah, it's silly, and I heard that I'm looking it up now. Is you guys have a 16-28 record, and you're 8.5 games out of the wild card, right?
Yeah,
The Cardinals have an 18-25 record, and somehow they're 2.5 games out of a wild card berth right now.
it's weird. It's weird.
It's
Well,
it
that's
that
just the East for you, and actually the
yeah.
Central is much better than expected too.
Yeah, and the right now the Padres are 22-24, and they are that third wild card team because I guess the third wild card team helps, but still, it's like, really? We're only 2.5 games out of a wild card, guys. I could definitely see our front office going, "Oh, guys, we're only 2.5 games out of a wild card. Come on, we got a shot here." Like,
Well, we're all in, guys.
yeah. Let's go sign. Let's go make a deal at the deadline. Like, anyway.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. Well, let me get it. Let me ask you this question: ownership, yay or nay? Is this the guy moving forward that Cardinal fans want in place? Do they believe that he's going to turn this thing around?
That is a complicated question, my friend, because like Bill, it's funny because Bill DeWitt is the reason why Cardinals baseball got back on track. Like if you know the history of the Cardinals, and thank you to Bernie Michaelis for educating me. Bernie's the man. He has a radio show and he's been covering the Cardinals for years. Um, Bill DeWitt bought the team from August Busch back in, I believe, 1995 or 1996. And at that time, Cardinals baseball was not very good. And August
Mhm.
Busch just wanted to get out. They weren't putting any money into the team, and it was a bad situation. Enter Bill DeWitt, and one of the first things he does is hire Tony La Russa as the manager. And we know how that turned out. Like Tony La Russa turned that thing around, and that gave us exciting seasons. They bring in Mark McGuire, Walt Jocketty made the trade for Mark McGuire. 1998. A lot of people believe that saved baseball with Sammy Sosa in the home run race, steroids aside. But but it ushered in like these greats, and then of course enter Albert Pujols. I'll never forget looking at the spring training lineup, and as a kid I was a huge Mark McGwire fan. Every Cardinals fan was my age, and you're like, who is this Albert Pujols that's hitting behind Mark McGwire? We have no idea who this guy is, but he has a strange sounding name that people can probably make fun of. But he, like that led to a whole era of Cardinals baseball that, and Yadier Molina and trading for Adam Wainwright. Like the Cardinals used to be this team that pushed all the right buttons and made all the right moves. And that led to just an incredible amount of success. And now Bill DeWitt, when we need him to make a move like, hey, back in the day, you were willing to shake things up and bring in a totally different manager than this team had. I think they fired Joe Torre. I could be wrong. Like I think Joe Torre was the manager, and I think he was the one that was fired, and they brought in Tony La Russa. I think I could be wrong about that. Some Cardinals fan will let me know in the comments, I'm sure. But now when we need him to make a very similar type move, we need him to shake things up. The status quo is not cutting it anymore. It really feels like Bill DeWitt is reluctant to make those moves, and he's very reliant upon somebody who's been there since, I believe, 2011, and John Mozeliak, or he's been with the organization for 20 plus years. But as far as like GM and president of baseball operations, I think he's been in that role since 2011. I think I could be wrong. Again, I'd have to double check. But there's no doubt that the Cardinals need a shakeup, and we know that ownership is the one thing you can be bad at and still keep your job, ownership.
Yeah.
So I don't see the DeWitts selling the team anytime soon. What I hope they do is that they're willing to look at what's gone on the last couple seasons and go, this ain't working out. If it doesn't get better, especially by, Memorial Day, that's always my barometer. If by the end of May, you're not any good, you're in the cellar, chances are you're not going to climb out of that, especially with teams like the Brewers and the Cubs in the division. And the Cubs, there's no question the Cubs have more talent, especially in their starting pitching rotation. I think the Cubs starting pitching rotation in the future, because they haven't even really called up some of their guys down in AAA, like the Cade Hortons of the world. That could get really scary for the Cardinals to deal with. And I'm really not looking forward to this series coming up, but that's beside the point. The Cardinals need a shakeup. And I don't know what that is, but they need somebody in charge that's going to push the right buttons again. And that's not John Mozeliak. I don't know if you can't trust John Mozeliak, because what they did this offseason, honestly, was like trying to put a Band-Aid over a cannonball wound. Like it just wasn't going to work out. Like bringing in Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson, and you're just, you're trying to throw money at the situation, like and not even really well spent money, because every Cardinals fan that I talked to, and I would just ask them, what do you think of, Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson? Like, and they were like, really? They were excited about Sonny Gray, and that to this point has been a really good move. But it's like, really, Lance, this is our solution? Like Lance Lynn and Sonny Gray? I think they would have rather pooled that money and brought back Jordan Montgomery, and then figured out the fifth starter in the rotation. But we need a shakeup. We need something to happen. I feel terrible for Ollie Marmol, because he gets a lot of the blame for this, and I don't know if Tony La Russa in his prime could have, like, with the pitching last year and the way that they're hitting this year. I don't know, but I think the front office needs a major shakeup, and I hope Bill DeWitt's willing to do it. So that's a long-winded way of saying I don't know. I know we're going to have to deal with them. I don't think so, because I want to believe that we've seen so much good baseball. I'm so thankful for it. Like other franchises are so envious of the 2 World Series in my lifetime. I couldn't hardly ask for more. So I want to say, yeah, if you're going to make me choose, I'll say yes, he's the right owner for the job. But we need some kind of front office shakeup if things continue to trend in this direction, and it definitely looks like they are. But I'm assuming your answer is different from mine. What do you think about your ownership group because you've hinted at it already, but I want to hear this from
It
you.
says sell the team and already on the top start part of the thing. So yeah, that's all I have to
Yeah,
say. No, but for real,
yeah.
what needs to change is his ego. His ego has been way too big since he bought the team from Disney. He doesn't honor the one World Series that we do have. Basically, on the 20th year anniversary of the Angels 2002 season, he brought half of them in, but they had to pay for their own airfare. You know what I mean? Like he
Oh,
he
no.
didn't
Oh, no.
he it was on a Wednesday, and all they gave away was a long sleeve sort of biker turtleneck in the middle of
Mhm.
summer. So in Anaheim, so that made
Wow.
no sense. No, he's never been the guy. He's never been the guy because I felt like it was all about me. It was all about what I looked like being the first minority owner in baseball. But he never embraced the minorities that live around the stadium. And he's always done things opposite of what you think he would do. And when he got Disney's organization, a lot of Angel fans didn't like they liked the good old Gene Autry. He was the movie star, radio star, um, just a singer. He was everything. And he owned the Angels. He loved the Angels. He was like your grandpa. And when he sold to Disney, a lot of people didn't like that. But the truth of the matter is, going back into history, the Angels' best baseball was under Disney. They resurrected this team that was dead when Antry was passing away, and they turned it into a team that was a juggernaut. Everyone they drafted, they didn't spend high on the payroll, they spent high on the scouting, and the team was the organization was put together beautifully. So that's why when you say, "Oh, I was lucky to have had this in my lifetime watching this good baseball," same with me. There was a very good stretch from 2002 to 2001. You could kind of see it building, but from 2001 to 2010, it was just stud baseball. And Artie took over in '04, and he did originally make a couple good trades, getting Bartolo Colon, Vladimir Guerrero, got Torrey Hunter, Kelvin Escobar. They got a few other pitchers in the bullpen. That team was solid, but you could see him penny pinching every year. And as the players were starting to age out, and we needed those scouts to come through, we started whiffing outside of Trout. We started whiffing on all these other prospects coming through. We weren't making trades. We weren't aggressive like we were under Disney. And once all the Disney guys were gone, we had that one fluke year in 14, and then we were done. And we've been done. So my long story short is he's had to have gone years ago. We wanted him gone. This place erupted and social media when he actually hinted at, and I think he ruined baseball for me, Seth, last year when he
Yeah.
agreed to stay. When he said because he has a speech impediment, so he said unfinished business, and when he mumbled that, I was so pissed because even though he said unfinished business, you had some of our fans being like, "Oh, that means we're signing back Otani." No, he's not. He
Yeah.
just let everything go to shit just like that. And we had a year and a half ago had Otani trade rumors everywhere. There was several teams that won. There was a 3-team trade that could have went through. Up until last year's deadline, Baltimore and Tampa Bay offered multiple prospects for a rental of Otani, and it doesn't come down to our GM. At least your owner allows your GM to make decisions. You can't change the fruit snacks in a vending machine without already knowing. That's how much he meddles with stuff, and that's why we're in the position we're in, because we don't know how good Perry Manassian, our general manager, can be. We know he's aggressive. We know he values analytics and this, and that. But we don't know how good he can be because even in the offseason, him and Trout were like, well, we pitched these guys to Moreno, but he said no. I mean, what other team do you hear, like other players and GMs are like, hey, man, we really want to win. We need these guys. Can you do it? Oh, no, the owner said no, so we're handcuffed. And that's where we're at, man. Nothing's going to change, Seth, for us until he's gone.
That's so sorry to hear. Like that sounds very depressing. That sounds like a very depressing way of, and
That's Angels baseball.
it's so crazy that, and like I cover the NFL too, And it's
Mhm.
just like the Carolina Panthers, like the owner
Oh,
there it sounds like a very similar situation because the rumor there, and not to go too far into NFL on a baseball podcast, but if you know anything about the NFL, like CJ Stroud had this amazing year, and supposedly his whole staff wanted CJ Stroud,
yep.
and he went into a room, or they went in to go visit Nick Saban, and he told his entire staff, he's like, nope, wait here. And he goes in, and this is according to David Kaplan, who I listen to Chicago sports radio just about every morning. And by the end of that private meeting with Saban, they were going to take Bryce Young. And who knows? Like it's a different situation. Like with every team, like who knows if CJ Stroud would have come in there and competed and been as good as he was right away. But I can tell you that he's probably better than Bryce Young. And this is what happens when like owners meddle in business that they shouldn't be meddling in. It's like if you're an owner, you're not a scout, you're not a GM, you should hire good people and get out of the way. Like that's
Yeah.
like, and you can set like, okay, we can't, obviously if you're the Royals, like, well, we can't spend $200 million here, guys. So we're going to have to like spend our money elsewhere, probably in scouting and development. Right. But
Wisely,
yeah,
yes.
wisely. Yeah, spending your money wisely is more important than just, spending money and doing what the Mets did last year. But that is, I hope for you that you find that he decides to sell the team sooner
It,
rather than later, because he sounds like the David Tepper of the MLB.
he's a dick. I think what he is like if you look at Jerry
Yeah.
Jones, at least
Mhm.
Jerry Jones has success during the regular season. He
Yeah.
meddles too much. He's front and center. If anything good happens, it's all about me. And I feel that's what Artie is. When things were good, Seth, we'd see him walking the concourse, the upper deck, buying beers for fans, and just being Mr. Shake hands and kiss babies. And
Mhm.
since this team has been in the shitter the last few years, especially, we used to see him in spring training, doesn't attend when he's at games. The lights are out in his suite, and
Mhm.
the people are taking pictures, zooming in with a flash to see him because he doesn't want to be seen. And we will always compare him to Jerry Jones, but without the winning. And
Mhm.
Dallas doesn't do that much winning either, but still, at least the Cowboys get to the playoffs. We can't even do that, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I pulled up your record, and you're right about the mid 2000s, where I'm looking 89 92 wins in 2004, 95, 89, 94, 100, 97.
Yeah.
And there was a down year in 2010, but there was 86, 89, and then right there in 2013 you had a good year in 2014, but since 2015, 85 wins, 74 wins, 80 wins, 80 wins, 72 wins, 26 wins in the COVID year, 77, 73, 73, and so far 16 and 28. So you're spot on. Like since that 2014 year, the most wins the Angels have had is 2015, where they won 85 games.
Correct. And here's one other fun fact for you and your podcast. If you want to run this on there or ask him a question, trivia question.
Okay.
What's the only team in Major League Baseball to have never lost 100 games?
Is it the Angels?
It's the Angels, but we are on a crash course with 100 losses this year.
Wow. That. Yeah.
You could look
Wow.
through our entire history. We've never lost 100 games.
I just did, and you're correct. Yeah. Because that's easy to spot 100, in the
It,
loss column.
it sure is. So, I mean, we've been very mid. I'll give us that for our franchise, but at
Yeah.
least we've never dropped that 100. But now that you look back at it and you see what Baltimore did for 3 years, it kind of paid off. Although they had to scout good, but man, they had the pick of the litter, didn't they?
Yeah, no, definitely. And if the Cardinals rebuild, and um, who knows what they'll do. I think that's probably the right course of action at this point, but they don't have to look too far to look at a good model. I mean, look at what the Cubs did. Like
True.
the Cubs turned it around really quick, way quicker than I thought they would, because it's the Cubs, and the Cubs are very like, I listen to stories, and again, I listen to Chicago. This is David Kaplan, who's very plugged into like Chicago sports, and he said like back when the Wrigley owned the team, they would like basically the guy would come in and say, "Oh, here's what we need." And the front like Wrigley would say, "Are you sure you don't want any more money than that?" He's like, "Nope, we're good." Like, and it's like we're Chicago here. It's like this is where I'm like you're terrified as a Cardinals fan. It's like, how have the Cubs not figured this out? And it really kind of feels like with their farm system now and their infrastructure of players now, they haven't like hit on everything, but it's set up really well for them to be this juggernaut of a team. And I think that like we'll see if they go the extra, they push their chips in this next offseason, because this next offseason for them is setting up to where they could really be the belle of the ball. Um, but
Well,
it's just go
let
ahead.
me ask you this, Seth. Now,
Mhm.
when we talk about Artie Moreno, we've heard him actually give an interview. He never brings up winning. He brings up entertainment, which we can care less. I don't need the best hot dogs. I don't need
Mhm.
fireworks. I mean, it could be a shit stadium. Winning is everything. Cures everything. You ignore the fact that the stadium's falling apart, you know. So my
Yeah.
question to you is this, because I know our owner won't do it. So that's why I'm asking you, because it doesn't matter if Texas won the World Series. That obviously didn't raise our game to be better.
Mhm.
Obviously, we don't give a shit about that. We just want everyone to come in and, hey, buy your tickets to get the bobbleheads. But for you guys and all the talk you just brought up about the Cubs and how their future is bright as hell,
Yep.
and you already saying that this is a critical offseason for the Cardinals moving forward if they're going to stay with the Cubs. Do you think ownership and general managers have that same idea as the fans do? Like they feel the pressure, and do you think that the Cardinals are going to up their game to match the Cubs?
I think history would tell you yes when they feel like they're a contender, because they spent money on Dexter Fowler when they felt the Cubs were good, and they traded, Marcelo Zuna, the Marcelo Zuna trade where they traded Sandy Alcantara and another pitcher of note that I'm
Mm,
spacing on these names. Randy Arozarena was the guy I couldn't think of earlier, who has been really good with Tampa
I
Bay.
forgot you guys had those guys,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, we traded Sandy Alcantara and Zach Gallen to Miami in a package for Marcelo Zuna. So that's how desperate the Cardinals were back then to add a legitimate bat to their lineup. And so yeah, like when the Cubs are good, typically historically that's you see the Cardinals up their game a little bit. And the recent history, like it really is astounding that that it's just now happening to the Cardinals. Like when you go down the clown car of moves like that, like trading the Marcelo Zuna deal, right? Like extending Matt Carpenter, like
Mhm.
extending Miles Michaelis back in the day, signing Brett Cecil. Marcelo Zuna really wasn't spectacular for the Cardinals in his time there. I know he went to the Braves and had a good season. I think he hit like 40 home runs for them in one of those years. But the list goes on and on. Andrew Miller was not very good, or at least not like the Greg Holland. They signed Greg Holland to a 1 year, $10 million deal. And this is like the frustration for me is like it comes down to like as I get older, like I can afford better things. Like I'm not a millionaire or anything, but I'm 35 years old now. I make a little bit more money than I used to when I was 22, and sometimes I want to buy something that lasts. I want to buy something of quality. But the
Mhm.
Cardinals consistently seem to be shopping at the bargain bin of free agents. Like, oh, Brett Cecil, to give him 30 million total, instead of, maybe signing a starting pitcher. Like Steven Matz is another example.
Mhm.
Give him a 4 year deal, $44 million. Oh, we're getting such a bargain. It's like, well, but is it going to really help your team that much? And I just feel like that's been the Cardinals' solution. And then when they do go all in, like for Marcelo Zuna, like it just completely blows up in their face. And that, some people think that's why Mozeliak's very like held on to these current prospects as long as he has, like the Dylan Carlsons of the
Yeah.
world, the Jordan Walkers, and even the Mason Wynn, defensively looks about as good of a shortstop as I've seen. He just needs to turn up the offense, which he had a pretty good series against the Angels. That's one guy that I'm like, man, that he looks really good. Like that's a guy I would probably hang on to. But yeah, it's just typically historically, yes, but if it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because this is a position they're not used to being in. They're not used to being
True.
in the role of the seller at the trade deadline. John Mozeliak even said that last year. He's like, "Well, this is not what I'm used to. I don't ever want to be here." And and they can't feel like, at least it would be crazy to me to think that they would believe that they can contend. And they're on definitely the track to be sellers this year. So we'll see what they do. But I would think that they're probably going to blow it up. If you made me choose today, bye bye Paul Goldschmidt and bye bye Nolan Arenado.
See,
And
that's what I was going to ask you. In your
yeah,
opinion, are one or both of those guys gone at the deadline?
but I don't know what you could get for Paul Goldschmidt right now. You might be able to get like a lower level prospect, maybe, because we're talking he's going to be a free agent, so you're not he's going to be a rental, A, and B, he's not hitting like Paul Goldschmidt typically hits. And Nolan Arenado, the problem there is like, gosh, if he's going to be just a average, slightly above average hitter at third base, and his defense has regressed a little bit, still pretty good defensive player, but like, if he's not going to be an all-star caliber player and he comes with a $30 million price tag for the foreseeable future, like, how much are you going to be able to get for him? I think the real prize that the Cardinals have, that they're probably going to be able to really cash in on if they want to, is Ryan Helsley. Like, if some team wants Ryan Helsley, like, I think he's getting up there. I think he's like 20 in his late 20s, maybe pushing 30. So he's another player that they're going to have to probably think about extending if they want to, and it doesn't really make much sense for them to do that if they're not going to be contending. So that's a piece that they could sell off. And of course, they have the Lance Lynn's, the 1-year contract. They have Kyle Gibson, who's pitching well, and that's an arm that a contender can use in the middle of their rotation. So they have some pieces, but it is a conundrum because, yes, I think they should, but I don't know if they will, because the history of the Cardinals says if they can't get what they think is a fair value, they'll just hang on to the player. And I could see him, like, if you made me pick, like, I think they would probably trade Paul Goldschmidt, even though I know they really wanted to extend him before the season started, and the contract just, they couldn't agree on terms to it, and which, thank God, in hindsight. But like, that's the guy I think that they would probably trade. But it's also tricky too, because both of those players have no trade clauses, so they
Yeah.
can control where they go. So all sorts of different things at play there with contracts and no trade clauses. And who are they gonna do the Cardinals have any hope of rebounding? Like, it's gonna be fascinating to see, because I think this homestand is going to be a big indicator, like, if of what's going to happen, because it could really go sideways, with them playing the Orioles and the Cubs and the Red Sox. Like, that's a tough homestand. And then they go on the road against the Reds, which, the Reds are not playing good either. But then they have the Phillies right after the Reds. So in the next 5 series, they play the Red Sox, the Cubs, the Orioles, and the Phillies. That's pretty tough.
That is pretty tough. And I mean, I could see us being 20 games or more under 500 by the All-Star break. I just wasn't thinking the Cardinals were going to be like that. And there's a good
Yeah.
chance with that record coming up, and or who they play, I should say, could put them in that spot too. So we could be talking and commiserating at the trade deadline, and
Yeah.
reevaluating. Hey, did we make the right trades? Did we get enough guys back? At least you
Yep.
guys got some pieces. Like, we have to depend on some of these lower tier bullpen guys with sparkling ERAs to look appealing to some of these teams who just need an arm out of the pen or a little bit of backup for the postseason run. Or, we've some of our bargain basement shopping has kind of paid off, but a lot of it hasn't. So yeah, it's going to be a very frustrating season, I think, for both of us. And it was good to commiserate tonight, Seth.
Yeah.
Unless you have any other questions moving
No.
forward here.
No, it was a lot of fun. I always enjoy talking baseball, so we'll definitely have to do this again. I don't like it isn't very often that the Cardinals and the Angels play each other, so I'm glad that you reached out and we were able to do this and connect this way. But we'll definitely have to do this again sometime, because it was a lot of fun talking. Like, it's funny how, like, we are two ships, like, not passing the night, but it seems like we're going in the same direction to the same cliff, the same waterfall, falling down. Like,
We
so
even
it's
have the same violinists that are ready to play till death when the ship sinks. So
same one. So it's, yeah, no, this was a lot of fun. So I really appreciate you reaching out. I'm glad we were able to do this.
yeah, dude. I mean, you're baseball and you're into football. We'll have to talk off air about football. I love football too, but maybe during the the playoff run or something like that, we could touch in on how the teams finished up, or maybe before that too. I'd like to do that before, but at the end of the season, maybe just talk about how the season went, and then possibly give our predictions for the postseason and who's in contention and whatnot.
That sounds great. When I get in touch with Mike, Mike and I get back on track, we'd love to have you on Long Live Baseball, our podcast over there. So I'll definitely shoot you an invite at some point for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You say the word, I'll be there.
Awesome. That sounds great, dude. Sounds great. Well, hopefully, here's hoping that Artie sells the team. I've learned so much about the Los
Thank
Angeles
you.
Angels here tonight. I'll join team sell the team, Artie, and we're hoping that Bill DeWitt can make some good decisions in the next month or so. So
Yes, you guys have a brighter future. So I have nothing against the Cardinals. A lot of former Angels have gone over there and done good things. You had
yeah,
Eckstein, what is
next
it?
time, Jimmy Edmonds, right? Jimmy
Jim
Edmonds.
Edmonds for a long time. I still hate that trade. We got Kent Bottenfield. Geez, who won that trade?
That was back when Walt Jocketty was making the magic happen. He's the real architect of. He's the one who signed Pujols to that 10-year, $100 million deal. And I remember people at the time going, "We paid $100 million for somebody who's never bitching about it." I was like, "God, hold on, let's see if this guy can play first." He seems to think that, and that's probably the best contract that the Cardinals have ever signed a
Oh
player
yeah.
to.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Easily, hands down. Yeah. So Walt Jocketty, man, was something. He was really good at what he did. He
Oh
was
yeah.
really an architect there. Yeah, like you said, of Eckstein. I mean, Eckstein was the World Series MVP in
Yeah, then
2006.
you had Spezio over there too.
Yep,
Doing good
Spezio.
things. Yeah, you
Yep.
you guys have always plucked some good Angels from us, and I had nothing against it. It's like, hey man, we lost him, but that Edmonds one that always killed me. I love Jimmy Edmonds, but he's a legend over there for you guys. You even have Benji Molina calling, I think, your Spanish broadcasting,
Yep.
which yeah, that dude is awesome. I've always loved Benji. Nice guy. Had him on the show a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, continued success when you guys can get on your feet, because I know you will, because you're the freaking Cardinals. The Cardinals always figure out a way. I know it looks bleak now. You're not used to it, but
Mm-hmm.
always tell yourself, at least we're not the Angels.
Well, hopefully the Angels, hopefully this Artie character decides to, just get out of town, and the Angels can be good again, because there's no doubt. I mean, this stretch, it's kind of blowing my mind from you guys kind of were in the same category as the Cardinals, really, from 2002. I mean, if you want to throw out 2003, it's a lot of 90 win, 100 win season in 2008. It's a lot there. It's really a shame, man. It's turned this way. And there's really
Yeah,
no reason for it, because you guys are it's a big enough market there in Los Angeles, I assume, that the
yeah,
fans will come and watch a good baseball team, I'm sure.
yeah. Our free agent signings. I mean, I'm blanking on the first baseman we had. He went to the Yankees. Was it Teixeira? Yeah, Teixeira, Mark Teixeira. I think it all started with that in '09. We had that playoff run with him. We fell just short. We could have went to the World Series that year. '05, we were really close. That Josh Paul thing against the White Sox turned that entire series. So you're talking about a team that could have won possibly at least 2 World Series in that time period. And then when they weren't able to pony up or didn't want to pony up for Teixeira, he went on to beat us the following year in the playoffs, and they move forward. We don't. And it goes downhill from there. And it's just even when we get Pujols was nothing but great for you guys. He comes here, he gets
Mhm.
plantar fasciitis, and that automatically diminishes his game and what he can do. And he didn't play all that bad. Yeah, he hit into a lot of double plays. A lot of Angel fans didn't like him here, but he was a leader here. And he tried to help this team win. It wasn't for lack of trying. And he played through injuries. He did still produce. So always value Pujols that way, considering what we have now, number 6, and Josh Hamilton and other players like that. But long story short, with that, it's just, man, yeah, we've hit the skids, and I think a good team, and how you could judge a team and an organization is when they do hit the skids, how fast it takes them to turn it back around again. And I believe in my heart of hearts, whether Artie sells today or tomorrow or 10 years from now, I still believe the Cardinals have 100% chance better than the Angels to get back on top of things, or at least contending for that division again. It's going to be much sooner than later. Trust me.
Well, I hope you're right, because we're certainly not used to this in St. Louis, and yeah, it's I think a shakeup is in order in the front office, but that, we have this Kyle Bloom character in there now, who a lot of people think will take over if Mozeliak is let go, but we'll see. But and what I tell people on the podcast, just to be positive, and it probably pisses some people off, but I don't care. I'm just like, but baseball, like, we're watching, like, in this series, it wasn't the greatest baseball, and I definitely felt like the Angels handed the Cardinals a couple games, but it's still baseball, man. And I just no matter, I just can't be the dude in the stands who boos, because I know what this team has meant to me, has meant to my family. Like, we've gone to games since I was a little kid, and it's been some of the best experiences of my life. Just, we were there like when Pujols came back in his final year, and well, no, we were there when Pujols came back as an Angel and hit a home run. Like, I don't know if they just served him one up to him. Like, that, I guess that would make sense. But still, it's like the whole place just goes batshit bananas, because this opposing player, this beloved future first ballot Hall of Famer, hits a home run as an opponent. It's just like moments like that. You're just like, God damn it, this baseball thing's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, when you have a class organization like you guys do, I could see where it's hard to boo. But I would say, give it, if it were to go down this way, and I don't think it is, but if it were to go another 4 or 5 years like this, I think
Yeah.
you'd find it in your heart to start booing. I'm
I'd
just
be
saying.
a little bit bitter. I show up at the ballpark already like a half a bottle of whiskey in, like, they better
Yeah,
win today.
exactly.
Yeah. Then
You'd,
then the booze come out. Then the booze come out.
yeah, you'd be that guy from the Cleveland Indians movie, Major League. These bums, I knew they were going to lose.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, it's great.
All right, Seth. Well, appreciate the time, and like you said, we'll do this again, man. You just say the word, and hopefully the success will come back to the Cardinals, and maybe we can get a glimmer of that at some point. But good talking with you. I mean, you want to give out your social media one last time?
Yeah, you can. Obviously, if you want to listen to the Cardinals podcast, if you want to hear me bemoan like what's going on with the Cardinals right now, it's Believe in STL Cardinals. Anywhere you can find your podcast, you can follow the show on Twitter at Believe in St. Louis Cardinals on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at Seth_DIEWOLD. And yeah, and you could, if you are into fantasy football, I do a lot of my main job is working for this website called playerprofiler.com. So if you like fantasy football, I work there as well.
Well, I'll have to check you out when football season comes around. We'll talk off air.
Yeah.
All
Absolutely.
right, Seth, let's end the show then. Have a good one, my man.
Yeah, you too, man.